All right, welcome to Mercedes-Benz Stadium for the Week 4 game between the Saints and the Atlanta Falcons. Big game for the Saints coming off of last week's loss against the Philadelphia Eagles, and they're going to see if they can bounce back this week and get their season going. We got Alvin Kamara right there warming up before the game. Sources say he will be active today. You can see that clearly right here. Chris Olave will also be active today after dealing with a hamstring injury that popped up on him in Friday's practice. Sounds like he should be good to go. There was optimism all day yesterday, so I don't think it's even like a long shot situation here. I think they feel really comfortable about where he's at. Obviously, we'll see if that limits his snaps. But I would say, Mike, nobody more important today than probably Alvin Kamara in this matchup.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, unless they're throwing it to him. I don't know if they can run the ball in this game with this offensive line. I am so fascinated to see what their game plan is. My best guess is a lot of quick passes by Derek Carr before the pass rush can get to him. Does that mean 10, 12 catches for Alvin Kamara? Does that mean getting the ball into Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed's hands and hoping they can do stuff after the catch? Does that mean the tight ends will actually make their 2024 debut in this game today? I really have no idea. I have no idea who's going to be important in this game.
I think he's important even if if they take him away, he's important because you're paying attention to him, and then that makes it easier for everybody else. If you take him off the field, you're just keying on Olave and Shaheed, and then the whole thing shuts down. I thought one of the more interesting things, Raheem Morris is going to be an interesting matchup for them because that Thursday night game last year was one of the better defensive game plans we've seen against the Saints, and specifically against Alvin, in maybe ever. The plan was just kind of brilliant. They were kind of sliding their protection to Aaron Donald. They were dropping somebody in the pass rush to kind of keep him so he couldn't get out on his routes. They focused on eliminating him from the game, putting the ball in Derek Carr's hands, and things kind of just did not go well for him in that game. I don't know what the approach is going to be in this one, but I think very likely he's going to be the target of trying to take him away. And I think just having him out there to do it, if you take him out, then it shifts. And if your only goal then and objective then is, okay, we're going to make Derek Carr throw the ball, and if we take away Chris Olave, then you're kind of playing with one hand with just Shaheed at that point. So I think him being active for this game, incredibly, incredibly important. I think he's their offensive identity at this point too. And everything's just going to kind of flow off him. I think even if he's not running the ball well behind this offensive line, I think they're going to keep running it because you kind of have to run this offense. I think at that point it's just about we have to do this so we can play off of it. So we're going to see what the approach is today. But him being out there is significantly better than him not being out there, no question about it.
No question. And look, we also talked all week about how Vic Fangio, quote-unquote, exposed, how to beat this team with the 6-1 front. And, Atlanta will probably try some of that. But either way, the whole concept of it is obvious to everyone who's watched this team, everyone who knows anything about Clint Kubiak. He wants to run. He wants to keep running. He wants to stubbornly stick with the run. And he wants to play everything off that. So there is no question that whether it's through a 6-1 front, whether it's through the extra spy that Raheem Morris used last year, whatever it is, taking away the run game, taking away Alvin Kamara is what every team is going to try to do. And they need to counterpunch to that.
Yeah, I don't think the 6-1 is new to the Saints. It's not new to people that run this offense. It's not new to Clint Kubiak. That's something that Fangio's been doing. He discovered that or created it back when Todd Gurley was killing people for the Rams. That's when it came out, and he started doing it then to kind of take away the outside zone. Yeah. How do we stop this monster? And then it was kind of something that other people have incorporated. It's not the Patriots used it to win a Super Bowl. It's
using
not
Fangio's plan that year, very famously.
Yeah, it's not a new thing. So I don't think it was I think the issue last week is that you lost Eric McCoy on the fly. It was. I don't even think they were surprised by it. It wasn't, oh my God, Vic Fangio's doing this thing, we weren't ready. I think they were ready for it, and then the whole thing falls apart. And then Jalen Carter's having the best game in NFL history.
You don't have Jalen Carter, and the Rams, and Raheem Morris doesn't have Aaron Donald either. All your plans are a lot easier when you have someone wrecking the middle of the line the way those two guys.
So what are we thinking today? We're thinking center Shane Lemieux, right guard Landon Young, left guard Lucas Patrick slides back over there?
That's the best guess. I mean, obviously Oli Udoh is somewhere in that mix, but I feel like Oli Udoh might have played himself out of that opportunity, and Nick Saldiveri as well. I think they're backups in this game.
I don't expect to see Oli Udoh at all today. Maybe jumbo packages as the extra guy. I don't think we're going to see him on the interior. They brought Lemieux up for a reason. Kyle Hergel got elevated. I think that's just going to be backup capacity. Lemieux kind of was talking like he was preparing this week to be the starter, so I think that's where it's going to shake out.
It's interesting that Lemieux gets elevated to the active roster and like as a center, Lucas Patrick back to left guard, because Lucas Patrick has been kind of a hybrid of those two positions. But I think Lucas Patrick has established himself as kind of a mainstay, and it's like that's one more position we don't have to mess with. They must really like how he fits at left guard in particular, rather than shaking the whole snow globe up.
I like that mess with Fred. Like that's kind of what my thought process on it too was too. Like you can upset two positions with two injuries, or you can upset three, and now you're kind of reconfiguring everything. I thought Patrick played pretty good at center last week. Incredibly prepared.
He's got a lot of
person.
history there, yeah.
Yeah, but if you can keep that left side together, and then maybe you feel good about the left side of your line with him and Fuaga over there. Maybe you feel good about running to the left side. You keep kind of some strength there, as opposed to like who knows what's going to happen on the right. We've never really seen Landon Young in a real game at guard. We've seen him do a lot of it at practice. Yeah. I've mentioned a few times like he looked okay there at guard in practice. I really don't know what to think in this game, though. It could be solid or it could be a disaster. Like it's just kind of hard to know exactly what to expect. To me, like the bigger commentary here is that he's at that spot in your fourth-round pick. Saldiveri, like, does not seem to have a path to the field right now. Uli Udo had the first shot at it. We kind of thought he was the next man up on the offensive line. I kind of feel like he blew that last week. That was one of the worst games I've seen, really. And like just at that position, like it was kind of shockingly bad. They were kind of just so disorganized, didn't know the calls. Like I felt like confidence completely eroded there. It's kind of a large commentary on other people that Landon Young is going to slide into that spot when really he's more of a natural tackle.
No question, and he spent most of Landon Young did cross-train, and he got in the mix at the people competing for that left guard job before it became clear that Lucas Patrick was kind of winning it and taking it over. But Young spent most of his time as a tackle. So you're absolutely right that is an indictment on both Saldiveri and Udo.
Saldiveri was the starter day one at camp, and then he gets hurt and he just falls. And now, like, if you can't get on the field in this situation, like, where are you at? How's it going to work? I'm kind of, I'm worried about his future at this point. Like
it's an important game for Landon Young too. And look, I'll admit skepticism.
Major.
But he's going into a contract year. You don't talk about that often with the seventh offensive lineman, but this is his opportunity to prove he belongs in the NFL beyond a rookie contract. So it's a big game for him.
We got a question here from P. Wren. He says, if the Saints fly home 3-1, what's the confidence index on making the playoffs? And if they're 2-2, how do you feel about their playoff chances given where the schedule sets up the next couple of weeks? Obviously, they got Kansas City next week and then Tampa Bay.
At Kansas City on a Monday night versus Tampa Bay on 5.5 days rest, then home versus Denver on a Thursday night on 4 days rest. Brutal stretch. It would be huge to put one in the bank here. It would have been huge to put one in the bank against Philadelphia when they had the chance to win that. I mean, it's going to be a tough stretch. If the Saints emerge from that stretch at 3-4 and then they get healthier and then their schedule gets easier, they can still make the playoffs. But there is something about losing 4 out of 5 games that is hard to swallow. So anyone they can steal, especially if it's 2 NFC South games, would be huge.
Yeah, if they can get this, it'd be a significant benefit for them. I'm kind of interested about next week's game. If Kendre Miller plays, he's going to start practicing on Wednesday. I was told coming back from IR. I don't think his ramp-up period should be that long. I don't think he was like that hurt when the season started. It had been a while. He'd been deep into the rehab process. We had already seen him start running. So I kind of
feel out of practice every day.
I kind of feel like his legs are going to be underneath him, and he's going to be able to hit the ground and kind of maybe even play Monday night against Kansas City. I am absolutely fascinated to see what that offense looks like with both those guys out there. I don't think Cesar Ruiz will be playing. Obviously, Eric McCoy won't be playing. So if the offensive line's a disaster today, I guess it won't really matter who's running the ball. But that two-headed attack there with how they want to run the ball, if he can be what we saw at the end of last season, what we know he can be, they could be a really, really good running team, maybe one of the better attacks in the league with both those guys going. So I'm excited to see what it looks like. But if you can win this one today, it kind of gets you back what you lost last week. They gave that Philadelphia game away. They should have won it. They were weirdly in control. Like, they weren't in control the whole game, but they were in control on the scoreboard. All you had to do is not have your guys crash together and give up a 65-yard touchdown, and they did the one thing they couldn't do. So if they get a win today, I mean, my feeling about the playoffs is way higher. Like you said, you could lose this game, potentially lose the next 2.
You got to find one that you can steal somewhere in there. I mean, I think it'd be way beneficial to go 2-2 over the next 4 games, and we're looking way ahead to say Denver coming in on Thursday night. That just has so much meaning for so many reasons vibe, Dennis Allen versus Sean Payton, all that being in the Superdome on a Thursday night. So that is one of the ones you'd like to get. But if they find any combination of games that gets them to 2-2 over the next 4, they're a playoff team.
Beanland says, key to the game today, pressure up the middle. Cousins looks like a statue back there. Need at least 5 sacks today. Do you think that could happen? 5's a big number.
No, I don't.
5's a real big number.
I predict no.
I don't think he looks as statuesque as he did week 1. I think there's been a major difference over the last couple of weeks. And then it's just also with the way they were using him. Week 1, it was all pistol. He's kind of, back, not doing the things he does. Like, everybody knows the thing that makes Kirk so good is play action, and he sells the handoff versus, like, the boots and all this stuff. Everything. The Saints talk all the time. They want everything to look the same. They want everything to look the same. Cousins came up in this offense too. Same Kubiak's dad. Kubiak himself coached him. I think he just kind of sells it so well, and they've been using a lot of it. I thought he looked pretty good against Kansas City. I thought Atlanta looked pretty solid against Kansas City, honestly.
5 is a super optimistic number, but that is where the Saints have to win this game. The Falcons are also missing their starting center who went on IR this week. Their starting right tackle who got ruled out for this game. So they are down 2 starters on their offensive line as well. So it's time to see Chase Young. It's time to see Carl Granderson. It's time to see a little Cam Jordan. It's time to see some Brian Brzee. That is where the Saints have to win this game, no question. And look, he can sell the play action because he's got Bijan Robinson. You just talked about the 61-yard touchdown they gave up to Dallas Goedert. They also gave up a 65-yard touchdown run to Saquon Barkley. They're looking at another running back who's just as dynamic. So they got to win up front. They cannot let Atlanta establish the run in the play action game. They need to make them uncomfortable up front.
I'm going to read this one, and I mean no disrespect to the question asker because it is a talking point, and a lot of people have it. I just don't like the talking point. I think it's unfair. It's the Saints struggle on offense today. Do you think it's a reflection of the injuries, or is it on the coaches? If coaching, then how would you characterize the first 2 weeks? Outliers. I think it's incredibly unfair to kind of just throw it out right away. Like, at some point, like I know everyone hates, like, well, they got to overcome every injury. At some point, like, there's a lot of attrition. There's a lot of attrition on that offensive line. If they can't block today, that's not necessarily a coaching issue. It might be a talent issue. It might be not having enough depth. It might be the construction of the offensive line that everybody was worried about going into the season. When you have everybody healthy, like, yeah, you can probably hide your tackle a little bit better. But when you don't have a guard next to him to help with that, now your tackle becomes harder. Now you got to try to hide your guard. Now you got to try to hide your center. Like, you're talking from center all the way over to right tackle, potentially as areas that you have to hide. If you can't scheme your way out of that, that doesn't mean that, like, if Clint Kubiak doesn't need players to succeed, then just don't sign anybody. Like, save all your money and invest it somewhere else. Donate it to the community. Go fill potholes because, like, you don't need to pay NFL players if you're just expected to be able to coach around everything. I think that's maybe a little bit unreasonable. So, like, let's see the game and how it goes. There's only so much you can do, though, at a certain point.
Well, the question comes with a premise that they're going to struggle today. So if you're going into a game expecting them to struggle, it's hard to blame the coaching for that. But we'd have to see how it plays out. I mean, the coaching got A+ in weeks 1 and 2. And like I've said multiple times, go read Nick's film study after week 2. It was kind of brilliant what they did to hide their deficiencies at the tackle positions against Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. The coaching got an A++ for that game. And last week they probably got a C-, but even still it was such a weird game because they were leading the entire time. So you would think maybe they should have changed up their plan after McCoy got hurt on the fly, but they also found a way to be winning that game the entire time. So it didn't ever call for drastic measures. So, yeah, if they stink today, then we'll dissect why did they stink. But I just feel like that question is on your tablet right now because people are looking at the personnel and thinking they might struggle today.
Yeah. They tried to change the plan last week, too, and it's hard. It's hard to do that on the fly, and it's even harder to do it when your interior's just getting blown up and your guys, you're calling stuff in there. I mean, we literally saw 2 guys pull the same direction and crash into each other behind the center. Like, when stuff like that's happening, there's only so much you can do. I mean, that's a disastrous injury on the fly. Eric McCoy is a very, very important player on this offensive line. I would argue maybe as important as any center in the league, and probably more so than most of them because of where they're at on it, the leadership, kind of how they constructed their offensive line. Incredibly important player. It's a tough place. It's a tough place to exist. And I'm not making an excuse for him. Like, you could have a very poorly coached game here and find a way to, be bad despite that. Like, but you could also coach well and just not be able to overcome what's not there.
It's funny, we do our top 20 rankings every offseason, and I think you had McCoy 4th, higher than any of us. And last week, by playing 3 snaps, he proved that you were right.
What are you expecting from Taysom Hill today? Someone wants to know your thoughts on his fantasy point total.
Well, here's the thing. I think Taysom should be pretty important in this game. Alvin Kamara is going to play now. And so I think Alvin will still get a lot of touches. I don't think Taysom necessarily needs to get tons of volume because Alvin is going to play. But I think Taysom's incredibly strong runner who can break tackles on his own, but I think he's going to be hurt by the offensive line struggles as well. I think if they had a fully healthy offensive line, I'd expect Taysom to average his 6 yards a carry. Behind this offensive line, I think he could get stuffed at the line of scrimmage a lot. So I think Taysom will be fairly important in this game, but I don't know that I'd feel hugely good about any runners in this game with this offensive line for fantasy purposes.
I kind of think he's going to be pretty important in this game. Fantasy, I don't know. I mean, I started him on my team just because I feel like he's going to get extra touches and maybe some of those goal line touches because Alvin has a hip injury and
Alvin, they have to know Alvin cannot keep getting 29 touches in a game, healthy or not.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want a guy with a broken rib taking a ton of shots. Like, you don't want to do that, so you're going to probably try to correct that or protect that a little bit. So I think he's going to have a decent day. I think you got to lean on him quite a bit. Jamal Williams hasn't stepped up behind him. I think he got 29 touches last week because you didn't have Taysom there to take his 8 or whatever. So I think he's going to be pretty instrumental today. I think he needs to be. I think you got to lean on him. I don't think you want – I don't know what the approach today is going to be. I'm kind of fascinated to figure it out. I don't think you can really take your shots down the field. So, like, how's Shaheed going to kind of be used in this game against these safeties, even with the healthy offensive line? I don't know that you want to have your game plan be taking shots down the field.
I don't think they'll have time. Yeah. And let me ask you this. I know I asked you this earlier, but if indeed it's a quick passing game, get the ball out of Carr's hands quick, who gets those targets?
I think it's Olave.
Yeah.
I think it's Olave. Yeah, he gets open quick. But look, Shaheed can get open fast too, and he's going to need to show he can do that but be detailed. Like, the big issue with him throughout his career is, like, his routes have not been detailed. Sometimes he's a little bit off the mark. There's some stuff that they've been trying to get him where he needs to be for quite a bit with the route running. I think we've seen improvement there. But you do want to see him be able to do more than get open on post at some point. And I thought last week, honestly, if you want to look at somebody on the offense that was a little bit disappointing, I think it was him. Like, he had a chance to kind of show, okay, I've leveled up. I'm not just kind of this, like, one-trick guy. I can make some tough catches. You can throw to me in coverage and trust me. I don't need to have 5 yards of separation to complete a play.
Yeah.
And I don't think he passed that test. And it doesn't mean he won't pass it if it comes up again. But if he could show a little bit of, like, okay, look, I can get open and catch a crosser with somebody on my back. Like, today's the day to do that. I think they're going to need to find some of that. So I would go with Olave on it. Today's the day where Juwan Johnson needs to step up too, big time. He needs to start showing, like, that he can cash in on that potential, the contract that they gave him. It's kind of been, last year they were open for it. It didn't happen. I think today's the day it needs to happen for him.
Atlanta's got a really good secondary too, which if you're looking at the matchups and you're looking at where Atlanta can hurt you most, that's probably the best part of their defense, I think.
I think Mike Hughes is the guy that out of those corners they got Alford, him, and Terrell, obviously. I think Mike Hughes is the guy that's playing the best out of all of them. Interesting to see if he can keep it going today, but it seems like more people have been throwing at Terrell than Hughes the first 3 weeks of the season, which kind of caught me by surprise a little bit. He tackles really well too, so he's somebody that I think will probably be a challenge for them a little bit in this game. But obviously, it comes back to them safeties, and
their safeties are excellent. Yeah.
That's the thing that scares me today is if Carr gets rushed with interior pressure, and he just I got a guy who can get the ball there. Like, I'm afraid of a route getting jumped, and then if you're trying to do quick game, like, you're really susceptible to a pick six in those type of situations.
Absolutely.
So they got to be really, really have an eye out for those guys.
Derek Carr under pressure at the end of last week's games at some points last year made decisions that could be exposed, and so he needs to not. Yeah, they're gonna be licking their chops if he's under pressure the entire day.
He, man, I'm screwed up with the time change. What time does the injury report come? 11:30.
11:30.
Game starts at 1 o'clock. Okay. He kind of impressed me with his ability to handle pressure last week, weirdly enough.
Yeah,
I
just
thought,
until that last
throw. The last throw was a complete disaster, but he was still delivering throws down the field while getting hit, and he's kind of done that well all year. So that narrative a little bit has shaken, but Derek Carr behind an offensive line that he doesn't trust, that he's had a whole week to think about, are these guys going to be able to get it done? Pressure starts coming in. He just kind of got his ass kicked last week with Philly coming through with that middle pressure. today's kind of the real test for him. Like, has he been able to recalibrate that a little bit? Has this offense kind of helped him get the ball out a little bit quicker, just kind of make it the reads and throw? I'm fascinated to kind of see where that development goes with him. If he can handle it again today, I think it's a shift in kind of how he's approaching the position a little bit.
Yeah, no question. He's really comfortable in this offense, and he's somebody that I actually have faith and confidence in. I mean, when we talk about matchups, when we talk about worry spots, strengths, weaknesses, I consider him one of the strengths and the advantages for this team.
Good question here. How long do you think Landon Young's leash will be if he can't hold down one of the guard spots? Could Kyle Hergel come into the game?
I wouldn't think Hergel. I still think Udo and Saldiveri would go in ahead of Hergel. But because they have all those options that are all sort of in the same tier, maybe it'd be a pretty short leash.
You think Udo would go on? I don't know if you put Udo in the game.
I mean,
Saldiveri feels like he should be the next guy, but he's so far out of favor. I don't know. I don't know if they'd make a change on the fly.
If they had to pull Landon Young out of the game, I think Udo, just based on experience, I mean, right guard is the position he's played the most in the NFL, I think. Even though he played bad last week, he was also just playing it last week. I'm saying if it's like panic, desperation time, we've got to get Landon Young out of there. I have a feeling he's probably next man up. I'd be surprised if it was Hergel without a whole week to prepare.
Another one here that's kind of interesting. How do we expect the Saints blitz packages to change with DeMario Davis out? That's a good question. Pete Werner blitzed a little bit early last season. It's really not been like something that's hugely in his bag. Maybe you saw Willie Gay on some of those. He seems explosive, like someone that can get to the backfield. But I really think you just lean into to Alontae Taylor, man. Yeah,
he finally got blocked for the first time ever on a blitz last week.
Dude, he's been incredible at that, and it's not a surprise. Like, he is an explosive player. He's a very strong tackler. Earlier in his career, like, the tackling was a major issue for him. He was just kind of coming at it with a little bit too much gusto, and he would miss some stuff, especially on curls. Like, he would end up over pursuing them. That has not been an issue. I've been extremely impressed with how he's played so far this season. I think he's really made a lot of growth. I think he's matured a lot as a player. His approach to the season was really, really good. But yeah, I think he's a guy that you lean on quite heavily in this game. But DA design and blitzes, that's not something I really I don't really worry about it. And I think they have the players to kind of get some of that stuff done. Really, and I'm interested on your take on this. To me, it feels like they just need to get more from their front. I feel like their front four has kind of been disappointing.
No question. And this is This is a matchup they have to take advantage of. If their front four on defense, if Chase Young and Brian Brzee and Carl Granderson aren't winning today, I don't like that's the number one matchup to exploit today, and they've got to exploit it. If they can't take advantage of their biggest plus matchup in this game, then I think they're going to be in real trouble.
Yeah, they got to get some stuff going up. If they can get some stuff going up the interior, and someone asked that question before, I like that idea of, maybe getting some stuff going up the middle with their center out. If you can do that, I mean, Cousins probably isn't quite as mobile as he was at one point in his career. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that was a fair point. I don't think he's a statue, though. Like, I think he's able to move. He's looked good on some of those boots. He made some plays off him last week. We are almost a half hour into the show, and we haven't talked about the biggest monster, I think, on Atlanta's team, Bijan. Like, what's kind of your take on him coming off of that game against Saquon?
Well, I did mention, they're similar type runners. Like, what happened on that Saquon started to break through and get some 8 and 9 yard runs in the third quarter. They did a good job against him in the first quarter. But when he broke through the line on that defense they had in where they didn't have a lot of guys behind the line, it was over. As soon as he got through the line, it was no one was going to stop him the rest of the way. That's the kind of guy Bijan is. He's a super talented athlete. He could catch the ball and do something with it in this game. He burned him last year in that game that they lost here, if I remember right. He's super talented. So sometimes it's about the run game, sometimes it's about the runner. And he's a guy that could just make plays happen on his own, like a young Alvin Kamara or a week 1 and 2 Alvin Kamara.
We got Brian Brzee here on the stream. Big game for him last week, 2 sacks, played really well. He's someone that, will have to be a part of that run defense. Colin Saunders is going to be active today for the first time this season. Maybe he can help with some of that interior run defense. John Ridgway will be inactive.
And Dallin Holker as well.
Dallin Holker also the other inactive. So
Cedric Wilson active as we expected. We see him working out behind us.
Yeah, he's out there. Olave, as we said, Alvin Kamara active. So a couple a couple big ones. So, yeah, look, the key to this game, though, is stopping him. And Pitts can make some big plays. He had a nice deep play last week. If they aren't on their P's and Q's against the
let's
the
talk
tight
about
ends
that
again,
for a minute. Yeah.
That's potentially a problem. I mean, that is something theoretically, like, it doesn't make sense that it's a problem.
I don't know that it is, like, based on last week. Like, I saw somebody saying that today. Kyle Pitts is like a fantasy tip because of what Goddard did. I feel like there was a little one-off nature to what Goddard. They were so intent on stopping Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley that I thought when Goddard had like 8 catches in the first half, they were like 8 for 70. They weren't killing him with it. It was kind of like, well, that's the one thing we're letting them have is those passes to Goddard. The 61-yard pass obviously was a colossal mistake. But I've never seen Pitts really go off on the Saints. If we see it today, it'll be a first.
Yeah, no. I mean, obviously, he's had a rough go of it his whole career. So it's not just the Saints, but he's making some plays. I will say, though, 70 yards and a half is a lot. You times that by 2, that's 140. That's a monster game, 16 catches for 140.
It was the one thing, though, and they had 0 points. It was sort of like the one thing they allowed them to have, I think.
Yeah, but, I mean, I think it's over a period of time, though. Like, it's happened more than once. So it's something that they need to kind of figure out a little bit. We'll see. You definitely got to find a way to cover them, though. But, yeah, they were surrendering that a little bit to shut down the other stuff. But they're going to kind of be selling out here, too. And this is a guy that can make you pay if you're not on top of it. So I think they got to show that they can do it. I don't know if next week's a huge test. Travis Kelce's off to a really, really weird start to the season. What's he have, like 69 yards on 8 catches through 3 games?
But Rashee Rice will be a test working the insides of the field. Yeah.
He looks old. Like, suddenly looks old. I don't know if he's just kind of playing his way up to shape like an NBA player, but he doesn't look like himself right now.
And I mentioned the defensive line taking advantage of their injured offensive line as the Saints' most favorable matchup. The Saints secondary too. I mean, they're at full strength today with Marshawn Lattimore, Paulson Adebo on the outside, Alontae Taylor at nickel, Kool-Aid McKinstry, break glass if you need him in emergency, Tyrann Mathieu turning back the clock this year, the other safety spot, obviously the only question mark there. So, I mean, you shouldn't get beat by Darnell Mooney in this game. You shouldn't get beat by, who am I forgetting? Drake London in this game. That's another area where the Saints should win. I like the Saints' defense. The Saints' defense, even without Demario Davis, is pretty healthy. I like their matchups in this game. I think I predicted the final score. Well, we said if Olave plays, if Olave doesn't play. I'm predicting both teams' final score to end with a 1 today.
I like their defense theoretically in this game. I like their matchups theoretically in this game. I don't like how broken they were against the Rams last year. And it's Zach Robinson comes from that coaching staff, like directly from it. They're going to do a lot of the same stuff. They got to just show they can handle it. If they can handle all the motion and keep their eyes in the right place and not get so disjointed, I like the matchup even without DeMario. But that's the aspect of it that I think they got to figure out how to solve in this game.
Traffic, crossing routes,
all that.
It burned them last week.
All that. Yeah. We have all your coverage on NewOrleans.Football. We got a game day post on there, live analysis, live breakdowns. Big plays happen. We have them diagram. You get more than that than you're going to get from us on Twitter. So if you're not signed up to the site, make sure you do that, NewOrleans.Football. Before we get out of here, your prediction for today's game.
Man, I've gone back and forth. I guess I have to pick Atlanta. I mean, I feel like this is a game the Saints can win, but I usually try to do my predictions with head instead of gut. And my head says this is a tough one to overcome. So I'll say I like Atlanta 19-17.
I said if Olave plays, I'm going Saints. Olave's playing, I'm going Saints.
All right.
We'll see how it shakes out. It should be a close game. Should be a good game. Saints kind of need to get this one. It would be a nice way to go into that Kansas City game. You win this one, you lose next week. You don't feel bad about it. Maybe you get some momentum going again. See if the offense can get back on track. Like I said, keep it locked on NewOrleans.Football. We'll have your coverage all throughout the day in that post. Everybody that's already signed up, we appreciate y'all. And for the rest of you, we'll talk to you on Monday. The subscribers get our post-game show on the site immediately after the game.